Welcome to the English Talk community, the place where you can improve your English listening and speaking skills with real-life examples and practical exercises. If you've ever felt stuck when trying to express yourself in English, you are not alone. Many learners understand the language well, but struggle when it comes to speaking fluently and confidently. That's exactly why we're here. In today's episode, we're going to break down effective techniques that will help you become a more confident English speaker, even if you're practicing alone. Have you ever been in a situation where you wanted to say something in English, but the words just didn't come out the way you expected? Maybe you were in a conversation with a native speaker and felt like your mind went blank. Or perhaps you were in a meeting, a classroom, or even traveling abroad and needed to explain something but hesitated because you weren't sure how to say it correctly. If this sounds familiar, don't worry. This is a common challenge, and the good news is that there are ways to fix it. Many people believe that speaking English fluently requires living in an English-speaking country or constantly interacting with native speakers. While exposure is important, fluency is actually built through consistent and intentional practice, and you don't always need a speaking partner to achieve that. In fact, practicing alone can be one of the most effective ways to develop confidence and improve your pronunciation, sentence structure, and overall fluency. In this episode, we're going to show you exactly how to do that step by step. Imagine for a moment that you are learning to play a musical instrument. You wouldn't expect to perform in front of an audience without practicing first, right? The same principle applies to speaking English. The more you practice speaking out loud, the more comfortable you'll become with forming sentences, pronouncing words naturally, and expressing your thoughts with ease. Many learners make the mistake of focusing only on listening and reading, assuming that speaking will naturally develop over time. However, if you don't actively engage in speaking practice, your brain won't build the necessary connections to produce words quickly and naturally in real conversations. That's why today's episode is all about giving you practical strategies to practice English on your own without feeling awkward or lost. We're going to explore methods that will help you think in English, improve your pronunciation, and train your brain to respond naturally in conversations. Whether you are a beginner or an intermediate learner, these techniques will make a difference in your learning journey. But before we dive into the details, I want to ask you a question. Have you ever tried to practice speaking English by yourself? Maybe you've tried reading out loud, repeating after a video, or even talking to yourself in the mirror. If you have, then you're already on the right track. If not, don't worry, because by the end of this episode, you'll have a clear roadmap on how to start practicing effectively. Speaking English with confidence is not just about knowing a lot of words or understanding grammar rules. It's about training your brain to retrieve words quickly, structure sentences naturally, and express yourself without hesitation. That's why we'll not only focus on techniques for speaking alone, but also help you develop the mindset needed to stay consistent and overcome self-doubt. One of the biggest obstacles for English learners is the fear of making mistakes. Many people hesitate to speak because they are afraid of pronouncing something incorrectly or using the wrong word. But here's the truth. Mistakes are a necessary part of the learning process. Every fluent speaker, including native English speakers, has made mistakes while learning. The key is to embrace those mistakes as opportunities to improve, rather than seeing them as failures. By practicing alone, you can eliminate the fear of judgment and focus on building confidence at your own pace. Now, let's talk about something important. If you're enjoying this content and find these lessons helpful, make sure to like this video. Hitting the like button helps more learners like you find this content and join the English Talk community. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now is the perfect time to do so. By subscribing, you'll get more episodes like this, filled with practical exercises, real-life stories, and tips to improve your English fluency. Our goal is to help you stay motivated and make English learning a natural part of your daily routine. As you watch this episode, I encourage you to actively participate. Don't just listen. Try to speak out loud when we introduce new exercises, repeat key phrases, and think about how you can apply what you learn in your daily life. The more engaged you are, the more you'll get out of this lesson. Now that we've set the stage, let's dive into the strategies that will help you develop strong speaking habits and feel more confident using English in real-life situations. Have you ever been in a situation where you needed to speak English, but the words just wouldn't come out? Maybe it was during a conversation with a native speaker, in a job interview, or even while asking for directions while traveling. You understand what's being said, you can follow the flow of the conversation, but when it's your turn to speak, your mind goes completely blank. Have you ever felt this frustration? If so, you are not alone. Many people struggle with this exact problem, and today we are going to explore why this happens, and, more importantly, how to overcome it. Picture yourself in a work meeting where you need to share your opinion about a project. You know exactly what you want to say, but the moment you start speaking, the words don't come out as smoothly as you hoped. Maybe you hesitate, try to rearrange the sentence in your head, or struggle to find the right word. Meanwhile, the conversation keeps moving forward, and by the time you finally form your sentence, it feels like the moment has passed. This can be incredibly frustrating, making many people avoid speaking English altogether whenever possible. But here's the thing. This struggle doesn't mean you don't know enough English. In fact, most people who experience this issue have already spent years studying the language, watching movies without subtitles, and even understanding the majority of what they hear. So if you can understand English so well, why can't you speak it with the same ease? The reason is simple. Understanding and speaking are two very different skills. When you listen to English, your brain processes the meaning of words and phrases passively. You recognize familiar patterns and rely on context to understand what's being said. However, when it comes to speaking, your brain has to actively construct sentences in real time, recall vocabulary instantly, and think about grammar and pronunciation all at once. This process requires a different kind of mental effort, one that many learners haven't practiced enough. Another common reason why people struggle with speaking is fear of making mistakes. Have you ever started a sentence in English, realized halfway through that you might have used the wrong word or verb tense, and then stopped talking altogether? This fear of saying something incorrect can create a mental block, making it even harder to express yourself. The irony is that this hesitation often makes your speech sound less natural, when in reality, making mistakes is a normal part of language learning. Think about how you learned your native language as a child. You didn't wait until you had perfect grammar before you started speaking. You just spoke, made mistakes, learned from them, and improved over time. But as adults, we become more self-conscious. We worry about how we sound, whether people will understand us, or if they will judge us for our pronunciation. This fear can stop us from practicing, which in turn slows down our progress. Another key factor is the difference between passive and active vocabulary. Passive vocabulary includes all the words and phrases you understand when you hear or read them. Active vocabulary, on the other hand, consists of the words you can recall and use effortlessly in conversation. The problem is that many learners have a much larger passive vocabulary than an active one. You might recognize a word when you hear it, but when you need to use it in a sentence, it doesn't come to mind quickly enough. This is because your brain hasn't practiced retrieving that word in real-time conversations. And then there's the issue of fluency versus accuracy. Some learners focus so much on speaking correctly that they slow themselves down, constantly second-guessing their grammar and word choice. Others prioritize fluency, speaking quickly but sometimes making mistakes. The ideal balance is somewhere in between, being able to express yourself naturally while also improving accuracy over time. One final reason why speaking feels difficult is the lack of real-life practice. Many learners spend years studying English, in a classroom, memorizing grammar rules, and completing textbook exercises. But when it comes to having a real conversation, they find it much harder. This is because traditional learning methods often don't prepare you for the speed and unpredictability of natural conversations. Real conversations involve interruptions, slang, different accents, and spontaneous responses, all of which require practice to handle effectively. So if you've ever felt frustrated because you can understand English but struggle to speak it, know that this is a common and solvable problem. The key is not just to study more, but to practice differently. In the next part of this episode, we're going to dive into practical strategies to help you break through this barrier and start speaking English with confidence. Meet Lucas, a 29-year-old software engineer from Brazil who has been learning English for years. He started studying English in high school, continued through university, and even took online courses to improve his skills. Lucas could easily read technical articles, understand tutorials, and follow conversations in English movies without subtitles. However, when it came to speaking, it was a completely different story. Every time he needed to express himself in English, he felt stuck. His biggest challenge was at work. His company had recently partnered with an American tech firm, and Lucas was required to attend virtual meetings with English-speaking colleagues. In these meetings, he could follow along just fine when others spoke, but when it was his turn to share his thoughts, he would freeze. He worried about his pronunciation, grammar, and whether his ideas would make sense. Sometimes he started speaking, but lost confidence halfway through a sentence, leading to awkward pauses. His colleagues would eventually move on to the next topic, making him feel left out of the conversation. The situation got worse when his manager asked him to give a short presentation about a project he was working on. Lucas spent days preparing, writing a script, and practicing in front of the mirror. He thought he was ready, but when the day came, everything changed. As soon as he saw his colleagues on the video call, his mind went blank. He started reading directly from his notes, but his voice was shaky and he struggled to maintain eye contact. He could feel his hands sweating as he stumbled over simple words. When he finished, his manager thanked him, but Lucas knew it hadn't gone well. After the meeting, he felt frustrated and disappointed in himself. He had spent years studying English, so why was it still so hard to speak naturally? He started doubting his abilities, wondering if he would ever be able to communicate confidently in English. He even considered asking his manager to let someone else handle presentations in the future, just to avoid the stress. Lucas wasn't the only one who noticed his struggle. A colleague named Emily, who had also learned English as a second language, approached him after the meeting. She shared her own experience and reassured him that feeling nervous while speaking was completely normal. She told him that she had faced similar difficulties in the past and had found a few strategies that helped her gain confidence. Instead of avoiding speaking opportunities, she encouraged Lucas to face them head-on and practice speaking more often, even outside of work. Lucas decided to reflect on what was really holding him back. He realized that part of his problem was that he had always focused on passive learning, reading books, watching videos, and studying grammar, but had never trained himself to think and respond in English spontaneously. His brain was used to processing English passively, but not producing it actively. Another issue was his fear of making mistakes. He always wanted his sentences to be perfect, which caused him to overthink every word before saying it. This hesitation slowed him down, making conversations even harder. He realized that if he kept waiting until his English was perfect, he would never feel ready to speak. One particularly frustrating moment came during a lunch break at work. Some of his colleagues were casually discussing their weekend plans, and Lucas wanted to join in. He knew exactly what he wanted to say in his head, but by the time he figured out how to phrase it correctly, the topic had already changed. He smiled politely and stayed silent, but inside, he felt defeated. He wished he could participate in conversations as effortlessly as he did in his native language. The turning point came when Lucas decided to take action. He remembered Emily's advice and started looking for ways to practice speaking more frequently. He joined an online language exchange group where he could talk to native speakers and other learners in a low-pressure environment. At first, he was nervous, but after a few sessions, he started feeling more comfortable. The more he spoke, the easier it became to find the right words without overthinking. He also started talking to himself in English at home. Instead of thinking in Portuguese and then translating, he trained himself to describe his surroundings, narrate his actions, and even argue with himself about random topics, all in English. This exercise helped him build the habit of forming sentences quickly, without worrying about grammar or pronunciation. To challenge himself further, Lucas began recording voice messages instead of texting his international colleagues. At first, he felt awkward, but over time, he noticed that his responses became smoother and more natural. He made mistakes, of course, but he started to accept them as part of the learning process. His breakthrough moment happened a few months later during another work meeting. This time, when his manager asked for his input, he took a deep breath and spoke without overthinking. He wasn't completely fluent, and he made a few small mistakes, but he was able to communicate his ideas clearly. His colleagues nodded in agreement, and for the first time, he felt like he was truly part of the discussion. Lucas still had room to improve, but he no longer let fear stop him from speaking. He had realized that confidence didn't come from being perfect, it came from practicing, making mistakes, and learning from them. His journey was far from over, but he was finally moving in the right direction. Lucas knew that if he didn't take action, his struggles with speaking English would continue to hold him back at work and in social situations. He had spent years studying grammar, memorizing vocabulary, and listening to native speakers, but none of it seemed to help when he had to speak in real time. He decided to change his approach, focusing on active speaking practice rather than just passive learning. The first thing he did was accept that making mistakes was part of the process. He realized that perfectionism was slowing him down, causing him to hesitate before speaking. Instead of trying to construct flawless sentences in his mind before opening his mouth, he challenged himself to speak spontaneously, even if it meant making a few errors along the way. He reminded himself that communication was more important than grammatical accuracy and that native speakers also made mistakes when talking. To build his confidence, Lucas started practicing by himself. He would talk about his day out loud, describing what he was doing, what he planned to do, and how he felt about different situations. This simple habit helped him get used to forming sentences quickly, without translating from Portuguese to English in his head. He also recorded himself speaking, listening back to his pronunciation and fluency. At first, he cringed when hearing his own voice, but over time, he noticed improvements and felt encouraged to keep going. Another strategy he implemented was shadowing. He picked his favorite English podcasts and repeated what the speakers were saying in real time, trying to match their rhythm, intonation, and pronunciation. This exercise helped him sound more natural and improved his ability to think in English, instead of translating. He found that after a few weeks of consistent shadowing practice, his words started flowing more easily during conversations. Lucas also made a conscious effort to think in English throughout the day. Instead of forming thoughts in Portuguese and then translating them, he trained his brain to process everything in English. If he saw something interesting on the street, he would describe it in his mind in English. If he had an idea for work, he would try to structure his thoughts in English before writing them down. This shift helped him become more comfortable with the language and made it easier to respond quickly in conversations. Since he still needed real speaking practice with other people, he joined an online language exchange group where he could talk to both native speakers and fellow learners. At first, he felt nervous, afraid of being judged for his mistakes. But after a few sessions, he realized that everyone in the group was there to learn, and nobody expected perfection. The more he spoke, the more natural it became, and his confidence grew with each conversation. To push himself further, Lucas started using voice messages instead of text messages when communicating with international colleagues. Instead of carefully crafting a written response, he forced himself to say what he needed to in the moment. His messages weren't perfect, but they got the job done, and he noticed that over time, he needed fewer pauses and corrections. This practice helped him get used to speaking spontaneously, just like in real conversations. He also sought out small daily opportunities to practice speaking. When ordering food at a restaurant, he chose English-speaking places where he could place his order in English. If he needed help finding something in a store, he asked the staff in English first, even if they also spoke Portuguese. These small interactions helped him build confidence in real-life situations where he had to think on his feet. One of the most significant changes he made was shifting his mindset. Instead of seeing speaking English as a challenge he had to overcome, he started treating it as a skill he was developing through practice. He stopped fearing mistakes and began viewing them as valuable learning experiences. When he made an error, instead of feeling embarrassed, he asked himself what he could learn from it and how he could express himself more clearly next time. After months of consistent effort, Lucas noticed a major difference in his speaking abilities. During a work meeting, his manager asked for his opinion on a project, and for the first time, he responded without hesitation. His sentences weren't perfect, but he was able to communicate his ideas clearly. Instead of feeling anxious, he felt in control of his words. His colleagues listened to him, nodded in agreement, and continued the discussion. It was a small moment, but for Lucas, it was a breakthrough. He still had areas to improve, but he was no longer avoiding speaking opportunities. He had realized that fluency wasn't about knowing every word or never making mistakes. It was about developing the confidence to communicate effectively, no matter the situation. His journey was ongoing, but for the first time, he felt like he was truly making progress. Sophie had always loved traveling, but every time she visited an English-speaking country, she felt frustrated. She could understand most of what people said to her, but when it was her turn to respond, her mind went blank. She found herself hesitating, searching for the right words and second-guessing her grammar. Even in simple situations, like ordering food at a restaurant or asking for directions, she struggled to express herself naturally. The worst moments were when people responded to her with a confused expression, forcing her to repeat herself or simplify her sentence even further. This constant feeling of inadequacy made her avoid speaking unless absolutely necessary. Determined to break this cycle, Sophie analyzed what was holding her back. She realized that she had spent years passively learning English through reading and listening, but she had never truly trained herself to speak in real-life situations. She knew the words, but when she needed to use them, her brain didn't retrieve them fast enough. She decided to change her approach and focus on active speaking practice. Her first step was incorporating English into her daily routine. Instead of just watching TV shows with subtitles, she started pausing after each line and repeating what the characters said. At first, she felt awkward, but she soon noticed that this exercise helped her develop the ability to produce sentences quickly. It also improved her pronunciation and rhythm, making her speech sound more natural. Since she didn't have many opportunities to speak with native speakers, she found an alternative solution: talking to herself. She described her surroundings, narrated her actions, and even practiced imaginary conversations. When she went grocery shopping, she would mentally list the items she needed in English. While getting ready in the morning, she would say her plans for the day out loud. By forcing herself to think and speak in English daily, she gradually reduced her hesitation. To make her practice more structured, Sophie started journaling in English but with a twist. She recorded herself reading what she had written. This helped her bridge the gap between forming thoughts and verbalizing them. She listened to her recordings and noticed patterns in her mistakes, which allowed her to improve specific areas of her pronunciation and fluency. Sophie also challenged herself to step out of her comfort zone. She joined an online language community where she could practice speaking with other learners. During her first session, she was so nervous that she barely spoke. She kept comparing herself to others and felt discouraged when she made mistakes. But instead of giving up, she reminded herself that progress only comes with practice. She set a goal to say at least 5 sentences in every session. Over time, these small interactions built her confidence, and she started participating more actively. One breakthrough moment came when she decided to test her skills in real life. During a trip to London, she forced herself to start conversations with strangers. Instead of avoiding small talk, she embraced every opportunity to speak. She asked shop assistants for recommendations, chatted with her taxi driver about the city, and even complimented a stranger's outfit. The first few interactions were nerve-wracking, but she quickly realized that most people were patient and encouraging. Even when she made mistakes, they understood her and responded positively. A major realization for Sophie was that fluency wasn't about knowing every word, but about communicating effectively. She learned to simplify her sentences when she couldn't remember a specific word. If she forgot how to say umbrella, she would say thing for the rain. If she couldn't remember appointment, she would say a meeting with the doctor. This strategy helped her stay in the conversation without panicking. Sophie also discovered the power of repetition. She noticed that in real conversations, people often repeated certain phrases. Instead of trying to construct every sentence from scratch, she memorized common expressions and sentence structures. This allowed her to respond faster and more naturally in conversations. Another turning point came when she started thinking in English instead of translating from her native language. She realized that translation was slowing her down, so she trained herself to associate words directly with their meaning in English. She practiced this by labeling objects in her house, reacting to situations in English, and even dreaming in English. The more she immersed herself, the less she relied on translation. A few months into her new practice routine, Sophie had a conversation with an American tourist in her city. Without overthinking, she responded naturally, asked follow-up questions, and even made a joke. It was the first time she felt completely present in a conversation without worrying about making mistakes. That moment showed her how much she had improved and gave her the confidence to keep pushing forward. One of the biggest obstacles to speaking English fluently is not just knowing vocabulary and grammar, but being able to retrieve words quickly and structure sentences naturally. To improve, learners need to integrate English into their daily lives, making it a habit rather than an occasional practice. One of the simplest ways to do this is through passive exposure, listening to English podcasts, watching movies, and reading books. However, passive exposure alone is not enough. To truly develop fluency, active engagement is necessary. This means speaking, writing, and thinking in English as often as possible. One powerful strategy is shadowing, where you listen to a native speaker and repeat what they say in real time. This technique trains your brain to process English faster and helps you develop a natural rhythm and intonation. Start with slow recordings, such as educational videos or audiobooks, and gradually move to natural conversations like interviews or TV shows. At first, it may feel overwhelming, but consistent practice will make your speech more automatic. Another effective method is paraphrasing. Instead of memorizing entire sentences, try explaining the same idea in different ways. For example, if you learn the phrase, "I missed the bus," challenge yourself to say it differently. "The bus left before I got there," or "I arrived too late for the bus." This practice helps you develop flexibility in your speech, making it easier to find alternative ways to express yourself when you forget a specific word. Thinking in English is a crucial step toward fluency. Many learners struggle because they translate from their native language before speaking. To break this habit, start small. Label objects around your home in English, describe what you are doing throughout the day, or create imaginary conversations in your head. The more you engage in this practice, the more naturally English will come to you in real conversations. Using set phrases and common sentence patterns can also speed up your response time. Native speakers rely on chunks of language rather than forming each sentence from scratch. Learning these patterns allows you to construct sentences more quickly. For example, instead of struggling to create a sentence from individual words, memorize phrases like, "I was wondering if you could," or "would you mind?" These ready-made structures make it easier to sound natural in conversations. Another key technique is self-recording. Speaking aloud is beneficial, but recording yourself allows you to identify weaknesses in pronunciation, pacing, and clarity. Choose a topic, record yourself speaking for a few minutes, and then listen back to identify areas for improvement. If possible, compare your pronunciation to a native speaker and adjust accordingly. Over time, this will help you refine your speech and gain confidence. Role-playing common situations can also prepare you for real-life conversations. Imagine you are at a restaurant, in a job interview, or asking for directions. Practice how you would introduce yourself, make requests, or respond to questions. Writing down scripts for these scenarios can help at first, but the goal is to internalize these phrases so they come naturally in conversation. Making mistakes is an inevitable part of the learning process, but the fear of making them often prevents learners from speaking. A useful mindset shift is to view mistakes as learning opportunities rather than failures. Native speakers don't expect perfection. They appreciate effort. If you don't know a word, describe it with simpler vocabulary. If you struggle with verb tenses, focus on conveying your message rather than obsessing over accuracy. Over time, fluency will come naturally. Expanding your vocabulary is important, but rather than memorizing long lists of words, focus on learning words in context. Pay attention to how words are used in sentences, and practice using them in different situations. Keeping a vocabulary journal where you write new words along with example sentences can help reinforce their meaning. Practicing with others is one of the fastest ways to improve speaking skills. If you don't have native speakers around you, find language exchange partners online or join virtual speaking clubs. Even if you only practice with other learners, the act of speaking regularly will increase your confidence and fluency. Ultimately, improving fluency requires daily commitment and consistent practice. Integrating these strategies into your routine will help make English a natural part of your thinking and communication. One of the most effective ways to internalize what you have learned is through direct practice. Instead of just passively listening or reading about language strategies, applying them actively helps to reinforce memory and improve fluency. To help you take action, let's go through a practical exercise that will challenge you to use what you have learned in this episode. This exercise will focus on thinking in English, paraphrasing, and practicing speech out loud, all of which are essential for developing natural communication skills. To start, take a moment to think about a recent experience in your life. It could be something simple, like a conversation you had with a friend, a situation at work, or even a routine activity like ordering food at a restaurant. The goal is to describe this event in English, but in multiple ways. First, say it out loud in the simplest way possible. For example, if you went to a cafe and ordered a coffee, you might say, "I went to a cafe and ordered a coffee." Next, try to expand on that sentence by adding details. "This morning, I went to a small cafe near my house. I ordered a large black coffee because I needed energy to start my day." Now, challenge yourself to paraphrase the same idea using different words and sentence structures. "Earlier today, I visited a nearby coffee shop and got a strong coffee to wake myself up." This exercise forces your brain to find alternative ways to express the same thought, making it easier to speak naturally when you cannot find the exact words you are looking for. Now, let's add an element of storytelling. Think about how you can make your description more engaging. Include emotions, observations, or even a problem you encountered. For example, when I walked into the cafe, the smell of fresh coffee filled the air. I ordered my usual black coffee, but unfortunately, they had run out of my favorite blend. I had to try something new, and surprisingly, I liked it even more. This type of exercise not only improves fluency, but also helps you build confidence in expressing yourself creatively. Next, let's focus on pronunciation and intonation. Take one of the sentences you created and record yourself saying it. Then, listen to your recording and pay attention to how you sound. Do you speak too fast or too slowly? Are there any words that feel difficult to pronounce? Try repeating the sentence, emphasizing different words to see how the meaning slightly changes. For example, "I went to a cafe and ordered a coffee." Sounds neutral, but if you emphasize different words, you create different effects. "I went to a cafe and ordered a coffee." Emphasizing I shows that you, not someone else, went. "I went to a cafe and ordered a coffee." Emphasizing went makes it clearer that you physically went somewhere. "I went to a cafe and ordered a coffee." Emphasizing ordered highlights the action of ordering. Now let's push this exercise a step further. Imagine you are explaining this experience to two different people, a close friend and a professional colleague. How would your choice of words change? For a friend, you might say, "I grabbed a coffee this morning at my favorite cafe. They ran out of my usual, so I tried something new. It was actually pretty good." But if you were telling a colleague, you might say, "This morning I stopped by a local cafe before work. They were out of my regular choice, so I decided to try a different blend. It turned out to be a great option." This practice helps you adjust your language naturally depending on the situation. Her journey reminded me of something important. Many language learners feel stuck not because they lack knowledge, but because they lack confidence. The fear of speaking can be stronger than the challenge of learning itself, but once you take that first step, once you speak even when you feel unsure, you start to see that fluency is not about perfection. It's about practice, persistence, and being willing to communicate despite mistakes. I have seen this pattern with many learners over the years. The people who improve the fastest are not necessarily the ones who memorize the most words or study the hardest. They are the ones who take action, who speak even when they feel nervous, and who embrace every mistake as part of the process. There was another story that stuck with me, this time from a student named Marco. He had been studying English for years, but always felt stuck at an intermediate level. No matter how much he learned, he still struggled to form sentences quickly in conversations. One day, he decided to challenge himself. He set a rule. Every day, he would talk to someone in English, even if it was just a short conversation. He started small, ordering food at an international restaurant, asking a tourist for directions, saying hello to an English-speaking colleague at work. At first, it felt uncomfortable, but after a few weeks, something changed. Speaking English no longer felt like a big event. It started to feel natural. Marco's biggest realization was that fluency comes from doing, The more he used English in real situations, the easier it became. He didn't have to think about every word before speaking anymore. He trusted himself more. The effort he put in daily built his confidence, and eventually, speaking English felt like second nature. When I think about Elena and Marco, I see the same lesson. The real key to improving your speaking skills is to stop waiting until you feel ready. No one ever feels 100% ready. You just have to start. Speak in small ways, make mistakes, learn from them, and keep going. The more you practice, the more natural it will feel. Throughout this episode, we explored the key challenges that many English learners face when trying to improve their speaking skills. We started by identifying the common fear of making mistakes and how that fear often holds people back from real progress. Many learners understand English well, but struggle to express themselves confidently in conversations. This is a common problem, but as we have seen through different stories and examples, it is one that can be overcome with the right mindset and strategies. We followed the journey of individuals who faced similar struggles, showing how they navigated their fears and eventually gained the confidence to speak. We saw how John, despite his anxiety about leading a meeting in English, focused on clear communication rather than perfection. He realized that the key was not to impress others with perfect grammar, but to make his ideas understood. This approach helped him gain confidence, and by the end of the meeting, he saw that his efforts had paid off. His experience demonstrated that taking small, intentional steps towards speaking clearly can have a significant impact. Then we looked at Laura and David's story, which highlighted another aspect of language learning: communication in real life. Travel situations. David's initial hesitation when asking for directions in a foreign country was a feeling that many learners can relate to. However, instead of avoiding the situation, he embraced it. By using simple and polite phrases, he managed to communicate effectively and find his way. His experience reinforced the idea that fluency is not about speaking quickly or using complex words, but about using the language functionally to get a message across. Another key takeaway from this episode was the importance of practicing English in everyday situations. We discussed how small daily interactions can contribute to fluency over time. Whether it is ordering food, asking for directions, or making small talk with colleagues, every conversation is an opportunity to build confidence. We also explored how repetition and active practice, such as thinking in English, speaking aloud, and simulating real-life conversations, can help reinforce learning and make speaking feel more natural. The story of Elena added another important lesson: breaking through the fear of speaking. Elena spent years studying English, but avoided real conversations due to her fear of making mistakes. It wasn't until she was forced to speak during her trip to London that she realized something crucial. People were not judging her mistakes. Instead, they were focused on the conversation itself. This moment changed her perspective, and from then on, she started using English more confidently. Her experience is a perfect example of how taking that first step, despite the fear, can lead to personal breakthroughs. Marco's experience showed us the power of consistency. He struggled with forming sentences quickly in conversation, even after years of studying English. However, when he committed to speaking every day, even in short and simple interactions, his fluency improved dramatically. His progress was not the result of sudden inspiration, but of daily practice. This illustrates the idea that fluency is built over time through consistent effort rather than waiting for the perfect moment to start speaking. Throughout this discussion, we also provided practical strategies that anyone can apply. One of the most effective techniques is to use structured, repetitive practice. Whether it is repeating phrases aloud, shadowing native speakers, or writing and speaking about personal experiences, actively engaging with the language is what leads to improvement. The more you expose yourself to spoken English, the more comfortable you become. We also emphasized the importance of shifting the focus from correctness to communication. Many learners hesitate to speak because they are afraid of grammar mistakes or mispronunciations. However, as the stories we shared demonstrated, fluency is not about avoiding mistakes. It is about continuing to speak despite them. Every mistake is a learning opportunity, and those who embrace this mindset improve much faster than those who remain silent out of fear. Another crucial point was the role of confidence in speaking English. Confidence does not come from knowing every grammar rule, or having a perfect accent. It comes from experience. The more you practice speaking, the more natural it feels. Even native speakers make mistakes, correct themselves, and rephrase their sentences. The key is to keep going. When you stop worrying about sounding perfect and start focusing on expressing your ideas, your speaking skills improve significantly. As we wrap up, remember that learning English is a journey, not a destination. Progress happens gradually, and every conversation, every word spoken, and every effort made contributes to your fluency. The most important thing is to keep moving forward. There will be moments of doubt, times when you feel stuck, and situations where you make mistakes. But every successful language learner has gone through the same process. The difference is that they did not let those challenges stop them. Now, take a moment to reflect on what you have learned in this episode. Think about the strategies that resonated with you the most. Which ones can you start applying today? What small steps can you take to practice speaking more often? The key to progress is action. Do not wait until you feel ready. Start now, speak whenever you can, and embrace every opportunity to use English in real life. If you have ever struggled with speaking English confidently, you are not alone. Many learners experience the same challenges, but the most important thing is to take action and keep practicing. Now, we want to hear from you. Have you ever faced a situation where you needed to speak English but felt nervous or unsure? Maybe it was a conversation at work, a trip abroad, or even a casual chat with a friend. What strategies have helped you overcome these difficulties? Share your experiences in the comments below. Your story might inspire others who are going through the same challenges, and this community is all about supporting each other. Engagement is a key part of learning, and by leaving a comment, you are not only reflecting on your own journey, but also helping others who might be struggling. Think about a moment when you had to step out of your comfort zone and use English in real life. How did you feel? What did you learn from that experience? Was there a particular phrase, technique, or mindset shift that helped you feel more confident? Take a moment to write about it below, and let's create a space where we can learn from each other's experiences. If you found this episode helpful, don't forget to hit the like button. By doing so, you help more people find this content and benefit from these lessons. Many learners are searching for ways to improve their fluency, and with a simple like, you can help this video reach them. Your support makes a huge difference in keeping this community strong and growing. Every time you engage with our content, you are not just watching passively, you are taking an active step toward improving your English skills. Subscribing to the channel is another great way to stay consistent in your learning journey. When you subscribe, you ensure that you won't miss any new episodes filled with useful tips, real-life stories, and strategies to help you become a more confident English speaker. We are always working on new content to support you, so make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can be the first to know when we post a new episode. Practice and consistency are the keys to fluency, and that's why we encourage you to keep going. Learning a language is not about reaching perfection, it's about continuous progress. Every video you watch, every word you speak, and every conversation you have brings you closer to your goal. If you ever feel stuck, remember that every great speaker once started where you are now. The difference is that they didn't stop practicing. So, keep pushing forward and trust that your efforts will pay off over time. Now, if you want to take your learning to the next level, we have another video that will help you continue practicing. Click on the next video to learn more strategies, hear new stories, and challenge yourself with more speaking exercises. The best way to keep improving is to stay engaged, keep listening, and actively participate in your learning process. Whether it's pronunciation, fluency, or confidence-building techniques, we have plenty of content designed to help you. One of the most effective ways to improve is by exposing yourself to the language as much as possible. Keep practicing, keep listening, and keep speaking. Even if it feels difficult at times, remember that every small effort adds up. The more you immerse yourself in English, the more natural it will become. Take every opportunity to apply what you have learned, and don't be afraid to make mistakes, because that's how real progress happens. Before you go, make sure to check out our other episodes for more practical advice. Each episode is designed to help you with a specific aspect of language learning, from pronunciation and listening comprehension to confidence building and real-life communication strategies. You don't have to go through this journey alone. We are here to guide and support you every step of the way. If you are serious about improving your English, make it a habit to practice daily. Watch our videos regularly, try the exercises we suggest, and most importantly, apply what you learn in real conversations. Small, consistent efforts will lead to big results over time. Every time you watch, listen, and practice, you are reinforcing what you have learned, making it easier to recall and use in real-life situations. Finally, remember that the journey to fluency is different for everyone. Some people progress quickly, while others take more time. The important thing is to keep moving forward. Celebrate your small victories, whether it's successfully ordering food in English, having a short conversation with a stranger, or feeling more confident when speaking. These moments add up and build your confidence step by step. So, are you ready to keep improving? Click on the next video and continue your journey toward fluency. We are excited to be part of your learning process, and we can't wait to see your progress. Keep practicing, stay consistent, and remember, you are capable of achieving fluency in English. Let's keep learning together.